I would like to give all praise to the Most High, Ahaya, Bahashem Yeshaya, Barak Atham. We come before you in what I would consider a special edition of the GOCC lessons. And I would say special because we usually don't come on at this time to do any classes. But we thought that since it is the so-called holiday season and everyone is getting inside or getting into the Christmas spirit, we thought that for those who are out there by themselves, or they may have family who still operates and celebrates the holidays, and they don't really have an outlet to go and join up and have fellowship with brothers as well as sisters who have the knowledge of the truth. So we thought that for those individuals, we would come on and do a lesson so that you don't have to feel alone. You know that there's others out there who are dealing with the same exact struggles and battles that you're dealing with in the holiday season. And also, you'll get a lot of information, a lot of edification and understanding through the Spirit of the Heavenly Father. So hopefully this lesson brings forth much edification, and you'll be able to teach your family members about the traditions and the customs of Christmas. Now, before we go into it, I first want to read a reference from the book of Ecclesiastes, the first chapter in the 18th verse. And the reason why I want to read this particular chapter and verse is because you have a lot of people who, when they get information, sometimes it causes them to go into depression. They become more depressed, and they feel as though they have to lash out at family members and things of that nature. But what we want to show with this reference and this precept is that you don't have to go into depression. You don't have to feel upset. You don't have to drive yourself up the wall, because we already know you're driven up the wall, you're hearing Christmas carols, you're seeing the decorations, and you can't go into the store without seeing the whole holiday Christmas spirit, okay? So we want to read this real quick in the book of Ecclesiastes, and this is written by King Solomon. And this is going to give us some wisdom as to what takes place when we receive knowledge and understanding. So let's read this real quick in the book of Ecclesiastes 1 and 18.
Ecclesiastes 1 and 18. For in much wisdom is much grief.
So we understand that according to the Bible, in much wisdom there's much grief. The more wisdom, the more knowledge and understanding you receive, the more you become depressed. Why? Because you figure out that with every bit of information, every bit of knowledge and wisdom, you find that this world is even more dark, satanic, and sadistic than you have once realized and believed. Okay? Go ahead.
And he that increaseth knowledge.
He that increaseth knowledge, he that gaineth knowledge, information, go ahead.
Increaseth sorrow.
Increaseth sorrow. So you become more sorrowful with the information. Now we tell you, brothers and sisters, that this information is not to make you sorrowful. This information is to bring edification and understanding for both you and your family members. So that's it as far as that particular reference. Now we're going to go into the information that we've prepared. And we, for the past few days, have been going into a lot of information and research to bring this lesson before you. So we hope you enjoy it. We hope you receive as much joy as we did as we went through this information. Okay? Mm-hmm. So we're going to start off from pretty much the beginning, Lawya. We're going to start off pretty much from the beginning, going into the whole celebration of Christmas, where it came from, some of the traditions that were picked up through time, and we're going to try to draw it up till today and see if there's any similarities from the ancient customs of so-called Christmas, as well as the more modern customs and traditions of Christmas. Now, the first topic we're going to go to is dealing with winter solstice. Many of us are familiar with the concept of the winter solstice and, you know, the celebration and where it comes from. But for those who are new to this information, we want to bring this out to show you that a lot of the customs that you find in modern day Christmas tradition go back to winter solstice celebration. And we're going to pull up a reference. I want to pull up this reference real quick. And this is called The Occult in Your Living Room. Christmas, Yule, and the Winter. Once again, it's The Occult in Your Living Room. Christmas, Yule, and the Winter. And basically, this is an article which goes into the history of Christmas and winter solstice and the link between these particular traditions. So we're going to scroll down and we're going to get straight to the meat of this particular article, where it says the origins of winter solstice.
The origins of winter solstice. Holy days and festivals have been heavily debated by historians and scholars for thousands of years. Although most contemporary and classic scholars tend to agree that most of its traditions and rituals originate in Sumeria, also known as ancient Babylon.
So even though scholars and historians are still debating on the customs and origin of winter solstice, most of them agree that these customs go back to ancient Babylon and Sumeria. Now, a few weeks ago, we went into a lesson about Satan and his mind games, and we touched on some information about Sumeria, Babylon, Nimrod, so on and so forth. So they agree that a majority of the customs that you find in the celebration of winter solstice go back to Sumeria and ancient Babylon. Go ahead.
In Babylonian tradition, the winter solstice was used to represent the death and the rebirth of the sun god Nimrod, the great hunter, whose death and rebirth were symbolized through the astronomical event of the winter solstice.
So all of the scholars who have sat down and went through this information have found that this particular holiday or this solstice celebration goes back to Nimrod and sun god worship. Okay? Go ahead.
The winter solstice is currently begins on the eve of December 21st or the 22nd of the year, at which point the sun reaches its southernmost part in the sky. Traditionally, this reversal of the angle of axis on the earth completes on the eve of on the 24th or the 25th of the year, when the sun again begins to ascend towards its highest point, which...
Okay. So then we can go through that. So you pretty much get the point of the origin of this particular solstice celebration. Okay, we're going to jump down maybe about to this point right here. Go ahead.
Although the Babylonians are generally credited with most winter solstice traditions and rituals, other theorists have pointed out monolithic structures such as the hinges, stone circles, or other monolithic structures including Stonehenge and Newgrange that date back 10,000 years and more, predating Babylonian, and which accurately measured and marked with the winter solstice.
So now they go into some dates 10,000 years ago. There's no way we can actually prove that particular date. But we know anything going back behind ancient Babylon, Nimrod, so on and so forth, that's pre-flood doctrine and information. Okay, but we want to mainly focus on the customs that were kept after the flood, during the time of Nimrod and Sumeria and Babylon. Okay, so that's just one key point we wanted to pull from that particular article. Now we're going to go into another custom, which many of the customs of or traditions of modern day Christmas descend from this particular celebration. And this celebration is known as Saturnalia, which was kept in ancient Rome. Now, of course, there's history which predates ancient Rome and Saturnalia. And there's customs which go back even further to this particular time period in which Saturnalia became an official holiday in ancient Rome. I believe in what, AD 27 or 27 AD?
27 AD, yeah.
Okay. But a majority of the traditions that are involved in Saturnalia are still notable in today's Christmas customs and traditions. So we're going to focus more so on that particular holiday, which is called Saturnalia. And we're going to read a few quotes. This actually comes from a documentary in which we'll give you the links to where you can actually go and watch this documentary. And it goes into the origin of Christmas and its link to Saturnalia. So go ahead.
The 17th to the 25th of December was always thought to pagans to be the best time of the year to celebrate and practice the works of darkness, because the days were at their shortest and the night were at their longest. It's a pre-Christian and midwinter pagan celebration of the Scandinavian Norsemen, where today's Christmas celebrations began, as a means of honouring the pagan sex and fertility god Yule. A 12-day celebration of the Yule log in the month of December was instituted.
Okay, so now this particular holiday or this particular celebration or tradition called Saturnalia goes back to the worship of an ancient Scandinavian god called Yule. And this god was linked to different sexual rituals, not to be perverse or anything on that level, but that's just the history of this particular god or this particular tradition. And it states that a 12-day celebration of the Yule log in the month of December was instituted. So you're going to find out that this 12-day celebration that was kept during Saturnalia is the origin of the 12 days of Christmas. Okay, go ahead.
A large single log considered to be phallic, a phallic idol.
So this particular log goes back to a phallic idol. This is phallic worship, similar to what you see in ancient Egypt with the obelisk. Go ahead.
It was set on fire and it continued to burning for 12 days.
So this particular log was set on fire and burned for the whole 12 days. That's why you have the song, the 12 days of Christmas. On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, la da da la la. I don't know how the song goes, but I just know from 1 to 12, they got 12 days of Christmas. Okay? This goes back to the ancient pagan Roman custom of Saturnalia. Okay, go ahead.
Animal and human sacrifices were offered onto the fire each day.
So animals as well as what?
Human sacrifices.
So animal as well as human sacrifices were offered on each of the 12 days of Saturnalia. And I wouldn't be surprised if still up until this day, on each of your 12 days of Christmas, there's an animal as well as a human sacrifice. But we'll get to that a bit later. Let's continue on with some of this information on Saturnalia.
Wild reveling accompanied the daily sacrifices, as drunken participants deviantly strove to make contact with evil spirits.
So the whole concept of this holiday was to go in deviance, drunkenness, revelry, to get as wild as you can so that you can make contact with spirits, because they believed that spirits were operating all through the 12 days. So they tried to get in contact with one of these particular spirits. Go ahead.
During the month-long winter solstice, courts in Rome were closed.
Similar till today, they close all the shops, all the grocery stores, all the malls. Everything is closed in celebration and in reverence to this particular holiday. Go ahead.
Any and all crimes were allowed. Homosexuality, cross-dressing, pedophilia, etc.
So any and all crimes were allowed. Okay? And it states that homosexuality, cross-dressing, we're going to get that out of the Bible and show you that these things are actually prophesied in the Bible. Pedophilia was also a part of the Saturnalia celebration. Along with Saturnalia, they had another pagan Roman holiday, which was called Juvenalia, in which children were also allowed to take part in the ancient orgies, drunkenness, revelry, so on and so forth. Go ahead.
Rome's order was turned upside down. Even children were allowed to join on the drunken orgies as part of the celebration.
Exactly. And that goes into the holiday of Juvenalia. Okay? So that's the origin of Saturnalia. I think we hit that or drove that point home. So we have to go too much into this information because we got a lot of references, a lot of quotes. So we want to try to get as much as possible. But for the most part, in fact, let's go ahead. Let's go a little bit more into this particular custom.
By 27 AD, the Roman Emperor Aurelian made it official, set aside a 7-day period starting from the 17th through to the 24th of December, ending with gift giving on the 25th of December.
So is that 27 or 270?
No, 270 AD.
Okay. So in 270 AD, this became an official holiday under Emperor Aurelian. Okay, go ahead.
And it was made... Oh, we've gone down.
Salakia. Go ahead.
It was made official and it set aside a 7-day period starting from the 17th through to the 24th, ending with gift giving on the 25th of December to celebrate the birth of the sun god.
So this was done in celebration of the sun god. So we're showing you the ancient traditions of this particular holiday to show you that it has nothing to do with Christ. It has nothing to do with the Bible, and it has nothing to do with the Most High. Okay? And the more we go through this information, it's going to make it more apparent and more evident. All right? Go ahead.
This Roman orgy to end all orgies later became to be known as Saturnalia, to honor the god Saturn.
So this is what the holiday was about, in honor of the god Saturn. Okay? So let's go to the next point. Now we're going to go into the Bible and read about the custom of child sacrifice, because a lot of people may come across this information. They may acknowledge that, yes, these things were done in the past. There was paganism, there was human, animal, and child sacrifices that took place within these particular days. But they may state that, well, that was for back then. We keep the holiday for what it is now. All right? And before we get to that point, we want to first prove that according to the Bible, customs of child and human sacrifice were actually kept. Okay? So we're going to start off in the book of Leviticus chapter 18, verse 21. And you can go ahead.
Leviticus 18 and verse 21. And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Moloch.
So the Bible states that what?
And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Moloch.
So the Most High gave the children of Israel a commandment not to allow their children to pass through the fire unto Moloch. Let's start up at the first through the third verse to show why the Most High gave us this commandment. There's a reason why the Most High told us not to pass our children unto Moloch, to give our children unto child sacrifices. You're going to find out that the nations that surrounded the children of Israel dealt with these particular practices. So the Most High, in order to keep us from going off like the Egyptians did, like the Canaanites did, and the nations that were round about us, he gave us a commandment not to allow our children, or to allow us to sacrifice our children to Moloch. Go ahead.
Leviticus 18 and the third verse. After the doings of the land of Egypt, wherein ye dwelt, ye shall not do, and after the doings of the land of Canaan, whither I bring you, shall ye not do, neither shall you walk in their ordinances.
So these were the ordinances and the practices of ancient Egypt as well as ancient Canaan. So of course, us living in Egypt for 200 some odd years, and now coming in contact with the Canaanites, who were another tribe of Hamitic people, who were akin or related to the Egyptians. He told us and commanded us not to do after their practices. Okay, so let's read 21 again.
Verse 21. And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Moloch, neither thou shalt profane the name of thy God.
Because by giving our children and sacrificing our children unto Moloch, we profane the name of the Most High. because now the Most High's name becomes associated with child sacrifice. Okay, so the Most High says don't perform these customs. Let's jump to Deuteronomy 12 and 31.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, Deuteronomy 12 and 31. Let's go.
Verse 31. Thou shalt not do so unto the Lord thy God, for every abomination to the Lord which he hateth.
So this is an abomination which the Most High hated. These are the same abominations that are being practiced, or that were practiced in ancient times around this same time of year, and are still being practiced until this day. And the Bible tells us that the Most High hateth these practices. Go ahead. What practice? Let's see. Go ahead.
Have they done unto their gods? For even their sons.
So these are the practices that the nations did unto their gods. But we as Israel were commanded not to do the same thing unto our God. Go ahead.
Have they done unto their gods? For even their sons and their daughters they have burnt in the fire to their gods.
So even their sons and their daughters have they burnt unto fire unto their gods. And this is what was done on the 12 days of Saturnalia. Every day a new child was sacrificed. So the Most High told us not to perform these particular customs. All right, let's get some more. Let's get the book of Leviticus chapter 20. As a matter of fact, let's jump to the book of 2 Kings 17, verse 17. We're going to show you what took place in Israelite history when we decided to now partake in these particular sacrifices, when we started to give our children over unto Molech. The same way the nations like the Egyptians, the Canaanites, the Syrians, the Ammonites, the Moabites started sacrificing their children unto gods, or were sacrificing their children unto gods. Okay? 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 17.
Verse 17. And they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire, and they used divinations and enchantments, and sold themselves to do evil.
So this was taking place in northern kingdom Israel. After Jeroboam took the kingship, he caused the northern tribes to now worship an idol, the 2 golden calves. So with the worship of these 2 golden calves came child sacrifice. Go ahead.
And sold themselves to do evil.
So we sold ourselves to do evil in the sight of who?
The Lord.
In the sight of the Lord, the Most High Ahiah. Go ahead.
To provoke him to anger. Verse 18. Therefore the Lord was very angry with Israel.
So the Most High became very angry with the nation of Israel. Go ahead.
And removed them out of his sight.
And he moved us out of his sight. Why? Because we transgressed the commandment of not giving our children unto Molech. Okay? So when we allow our children, when we allow ourselves to partake in these holidays, such as Christmas, which links back to the 12 days of Saturnalia, we ourselves are, in some type of way, shape, or form, whether you believe it or not, are giving our children over to the fire of Molech. Okay? When you cause your children to believe in these myths, you cause your children to go and bow down before the Christmas tree and do all these different customs that come with Christmas, we're giving our children unto Molech. All right? Go ahead.
And remove them out of his sight.
So we were removed out of the Most High sight. This is linked to our captivity, these customs. Go ahead.
There was none left but the tribe of Judah only.
So you had the tribe of Judah left. Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Go ahead. The southern kingdom.
Verse 19. Also Judah kept not the commandments of the Lord their God.
So the southern kingdom also went off and started following these practices. Go ahead.
But walked in the statutes of Israel which they made.
So they walked in the statutes of the northern kingdom. That's what it means. They walked in the statutes of Israel which they made. Go ahead.
Verse 20. And the Lord rejected all the seed of Israel.
So he rejected all the seed of Israel, both the northern kingdom, from Ephraim on down, all the way to the southern kingdom, Judah on down. So we all became forsaken by the Most High because we partook in these idolatrous, sacrificial practices. Go ahead.
And afflicted them, and delivered them into the hand of spoilers.
So he allowed us to continually go through captivity. Till when?
Until he had cast them out of his sight.
Until we eventually removed us out of his sight. Okay? Let's go to the book of Wisdom of Solomon, the 12th chapter. And it's the last one before we go back into some of this history on Christmas. Okay? Let's go to the book of Wisdom of Solomon and the Apocrypha. You have Apocrypha? All right. So we're going to the book of Wisdom of Solomon, the 12th chapter.
The Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 12, verse 1. For thy incorruptible spirit is in all things. Therefore chastenest thy them by little and little that offend, and warnest them by putting them in remembrance wherein they have offended. They leave their wickedness, they may believe on thee, O Lord.
So in other words, the Most High will use the same exact thing that you use to sin, the Most High will use it against you. Okay, go ahead.
Verse 3. For it was thy will to destroy by the hands of our fathers, both those old inhabitants of the Holy Land.
So the Most High used our forefathers going into the land of ancient Canaan to destroy the old inhabitants. Who were the old inhabitants? The Canaanites, the Zidonians, the Perizzites, so on and so forth, along with the giants. Go ahead. Now, what practices were the giants dealing with in ancient Canaan before we got into the land? Let's see.
Whom that hatest for doing most odious works of witchcraft.
They were dealing with witchcraft. Go ahead.
And wicked sacrifices.
And wicked sacrifices. Now, what type of sacrifices are wicked sacrifices? Because we know the Most High, Ahia, requires the nation of Israel to give animal sacrifices, proper animal sacrifices. So what are these wicked sacrifices? It's going to show you. Go ahead.
Verse 5. And also those merciless murderers of children.
So it states those merciless murderers of children. So those are the wicked sacrifices, the sacrifice of children. Go ahead.
And devourers of man's flesh.
So yes, the Canaanites also dealt with cannibalism. That was a part of their satanic rituals. Go ahead.
And the feasts of blood.
And feast of blood. They were blood drinkers. Okay, similar to what they got in that's where you get the vampire concept from. Dracula. All right. Go ahead.
Verse 6. With their priests out of the midst of their idolatrous crew, and the parents that killed with their own hands souls is destitute of help.
So you had parents killing their own children. These were customs that were kept in ancient Canaan. And those same exact customs went all the way up to Saturnalia, in which for 12 days, on each day, they performed human sacrifices. Okay, so this is what you're dealing with when you're following these modern-day Christian Christmas traditions. Okay? Is there any more on that? That's pretty much it on that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get back to some of the history on Christmas. So we briefly touched on the winter solstice, where it came from, which is ancient Babylon, Nimrod. We touched on Saturnalia. And we also touched on the concept of child sacrifice and human sacrifice to show you that the Bible speaks about these things. Now we're going to go into a brief segment showing you how Christmas was kept, or is continually kept, throughout the four corners of the earth. We're going to start in Bavaria. Okay? Now in America, we got the more Christianized, more commercialized version of Christmas. It's more easily digest. But in other parts of the world, they still keep the ancient pagan cultural customs. All right? So while you're roasting chestnuts on the open fire, stuffing your stockings and putting gifts under the tree and leaving things out for Santa Claus, this is what people are dealing with all over the world. Okay? So let's see what they do in Bavaria on Christmas. We're just going to go through a few places. Okay? The first place is Bavaria. And in Bavaria, they have a custom called Bavarian mortars, in which they shoot projectiles into the air. And we're going to read this, and this is coming from an article called The 25 Bizarre Christmas Traditions from Around the World. So this is one of the most bizarre traditions that are kept throughout the world for Christmas. You can read that quote.
In acknowledgement of the Christmas holidays, Bavarian Highlanders fire handheld mortars into the air every year while wearing their traditional dress.
So men wearing traditional Bavarian dress, which is Southeast Germany, they shoot mortars or handheld mortar projectiles into the air. Now some of us may hear this and we may think nothing of it. It has absolutely no significance to us. Okay, the only thing we know about Christmas is trying to decorate a Christmas tree or put up Christmas lights and things of that nature. Okay, so what significance does Bavarian mortars have according to ancient biblical history? Let's go to the book of Jasher. We're going to go to the book of Jasher, and we're going to show you what took place going back to ancient Babylon with Nimrod, who we just proved to you was the originator of these customs, or the reverence of Nimrod is the original or the origin of these customs. We're going to show you what Nimrod did during the Tower of Babel and how this links to what they do in Bavaria with shooting these things into the air. We're going to start in the book of Jasher, the 9th chapter. And we're going to start at the 20th verse. And when you get the chance, you can always go back online and look these things up. Okay, there's videos on YouTube. There's articles on the internet you can use to go back and research these things and see exactly how they keep this custom. Okay? So this is the book of Jasher, chapter 9, verse 20. And this is where they get this concept of Bavarian mortars from. Okay? Jasher, chapter 9, verse 20.
Jasher chapter 9 verse 20. And King Nimrod reigned securely, and all the earth was under his control.
So now this is going back to King Nimrod. We continually make mention of Nimrod because he is the originator of many of these customs, or people who worship Nimrod began to create these customs. Okay? Go ahead.
And all the earth was of one tongue and words of union.
So the whole earth was of one tongue and words of union, meaning they had the same philosophies and ideologies. Okay, go ahead.
Verse 21. And all the princes of Nimrod and his great men took counsel together for what Mizraim, Cush, and Canaan.
So you had Phut, the father of the Libyans, Mitzrayim, the father of the Egyptians, Cush, the father of the Ethiopians, and Canaan, the father of the Canaanites. These were a part of Nimrod's council. Go ahead.
With their families. And they said to each other, come, let us build ourselves a city, and in a strong tower.
So this is going into the biblical story of the Tower of Babel, Genesis the 11th chapter. Go ahead.
And its top reaching heaven, and we will make ourselves famed, so that we may reign upon the whole world. So
their concept was that by building this strong city and tower, they would reign over the whole world. Go ahead.
In order that the evil of our enemies may cease from us.
And you're going to find out that their chief enemy was the Most High himself. That was their chief enemy, as we're going to prove. Go ahead.
That we may reign mightily over them, and that we may not become scattered over the earth on account of their wars.
Go ahead.
Verse 22. And they all went before the king, and they told the king these words, and the king agreed with them in this affair, and he did so. Verse 23. And all the families assembled, consisting about 600,000 men, and they went to seek an extensive piece of ground to build the city and the tower. They sought the whole earth, and they found none like one valley at the east land of Shinar.
So this is how they ended up in the valley of Shinar, or the land of Shinar. Go ahead.
And about 2 days' walk they journeyed there, and they dwelt there. Verse 24. And they began to make bricks and burn fires to build the city and the tower that they had imagined to complete. Verse 25. And the building of the tower was until them a transgression and a sin, and they began to build it. And whilst they were building against the Lord of God of heaven, they imagined in their hearts the war against him and to send into heaven.
So not only was this tower a transgression and a sin, with this tower they sought to make war with the Most High Power. Go ahead.
And all these people and all the families divided themselves in 3 parts. The first said...
So each family broke themselves into 3 subdivisions. They all had one mindset or one concept of what they would accomplish once they finished this tower. Okay? So this, when you go back into the book of Genesis, the 11th chapter, it states that if we don't confound the languages, nothing will be prevented, or these men will not be prevented from their particular, or whatever they will do, okay, as far as their scheme. Go ahead.
The first said, we will ascend into heaven and fight against him. The second said, we will ascend into heaven and
So the first said, we will ascend into heaven and fight against him. Go ahead.
The second said, we will ascend to heaven and place our own gods there and serve them.
So they thought they would go into heaven and place their own gods on the heavenly throne. Go ahead.
And the third part said, we will ascend to heaven and smite him with bows and spears.
So they thought to ascend into heaven and smite the Most High with bows and spears. So this is where they get the concept of shooting things into the air. Around the same time in the celebration of Nimrod. Okay, that's the origin of your barbarian mortars. Go ahead.
And God knew all their works and all their evil thoughts, and he saw the city and the tower which they were building. Verse 27. And when they were building, they built themselves a great city and a very high and strong tower. And on account of its height, the mortar and bricks did not reach the builders in their ascent to it, until those who went up had completed a full year. And after that they reached to the builders and gave them the mortar and the brick. Thus was done daily. Verse 28. And behold, these ascended and others descended the whole day. And if a brick should fall from their hands and get broken, they would all weep over it. If a man fell and died, none of them would look at him.
Go ahead. Now this is a key verse, verse 29. Go ahead.
Verse 29. And the Lord knew their thoughts, and it came to pass when they were building, they cast arrows towards the heavens.
So they cast arrows towards the heaven. That's why on December 25th, in celebration of Christmas, in southeast Germany, Bavaria, men gather and shoot projectiles into the air. It all goes back to ancient Babylon. What?
And all the arrows fell upon them, filled with blood. And when they saw...
So the Most High confused them. He sent back the arrows with blood. Go ahead.
And when they saw them, they said to each other, surely we have slain all those that are in heaven.
So they thought they slew the heavenly forces. Go ahead. But the Most High had another plan. Go ahead.
Verse 30. For this was from the Lord, in order to cease them to err, and in order to destroy them from off the face of the ground. Verse 31. And they built the tower and the city, and they did this thing daily until many days and years elapsed. And God said to the 70 angels who stood foremost before him, to those who were near him, saying, come, let us descend and confuse their tongues.
So the Most High confused the tongues of the men who were involved with the building of the Tower of Babel. So this is not something that the Most High agreed with. The Most High was not with this custom of shooting things in the air, trying to overtake the heavenly forces. Okay, go ahead.
Come, let us descend and confuse their tongues, that one man shall not understand the language of his neighbour. So they did so unto them. Verse 33. And from that day following, they forgot each man his neighbour's tongue, and they could not understand to speak in one tongue. And when the builder took from his hands, from his neighbour's lime or stone, which he did not order, the builder would cast it away and throw it upon his neighbour, that he would die. Verse 34. And they did so many days, and they killed many of them in this manner.
So that shows you how powerful the Most High is and how wise the Most High is. Here it is, these men think they're going to go into the heaven and destroy and overtake the Most High. And all the Most High had to do was confound the languages. Okay, and that's what destroyed and kept the men from being able to build this tower. He didn't have to send some army or some heavenly forces to kill these men. All he had to do is just mix the languages up. Okay, go ahead.
Verse 35. And the Lord smote the 3 divisions that were there, and he punished them according to their works and designs. Those who said, we will ascend to the heaven and serve our gods, became like apes.
So the Most High is now punishing these men. So it says they became like apes. They became animal-like in nature, similar to what the Most High did to Nebuchadnezzar. Go ahead.
They became like apes and elephants, and those who said, we will smite the heaven with arrows, the Lord killed them, one man through the hand of his neighbour. And the 3rd division of those who said, we will ascend to heaven and fight against him, the Lord scattered them throughout the earth.
So the Most High scattered these men throughout the earth, that 3rd division of men. Now some people may be stating, well, in our Christmas celebration, we're not shooting things into the sky in defiance of the Most High. But keep in mind, these men at one point were in words of unison. Okay, they were of one speech and words of unison. So at one point they were all together with the same philosophy and ideology. So when they got scattered into different places of the earth, they all still kept remnants of these same customs. So while you're celebrating Christmas on one level, with the Christmas tree, with the music and the carols and all the things we do in America and the Western world, these men are still celebrating Christmas or the original practices of Christmas in their particular way. All right? But it's still all in unison. You're still in union with those who are performing directly in defiance of the Most High. Okay? It's all one practice being done. You're just scattered in different places. Okay? So let's move on to the next point. All right? Let's see what they do in Italy. All right? Let's see what they do in Italy for Christmas celebration. All right. In Italy, they have a custom called Befana or Befana. As a matter of fact, I'm going to type that into the chat so you all can go back and research that particular name.
I'm sure it's the name of the actual witch, right?
Yeah, right. That's the name of the actual witch, which is involved with this custom. Okay, and what she goes throughout the 4 corners of the earth, similar to Santa Claus, so what they call Saint Nick, and she gives children's presents or give children presents on Christmas. Okay, so let me pull this up and type this in for you so you all can go back and research this. Okay, that's the name of the actual witch, which is involved with this custom. All right, let's see if we can just pull let's get a few sentences on this custom. All right, you can just read that. This is coming from Wikipedia.com.
In Italian folklore, Befana is an old woman who delivers gifts to children throughout Italy on the Epiphany Eve.
So on Epiphany Eve, which is January 5th, this old witch goes throughout Italy and delivers gifts to children, similar to Santa Claus. So could it be that Santa Claus is also linked to witchcraft or some type of witch or warlock? Go ahead.
On Epiphany Eve, the night of January 5th, in a similar way to Saint Nicholas or Santa Claus.
And they actually mentioned that this is done in a similar way to Saint Nick or Santa Claus. Go ahead.
But children get gifts from both Father Christmas and Befana.
But they receive gifts from both Father Christmas and Befana in similar manner. Okay? And when you look at the story, as a matter of fact, I don't want to go into that because we're going to go into how Santa Claus and that whole concept of the reindeer drawn sleigh, where that comes from. All right? That also has an ancient pagan origin. All right? But let's move on to the next one. This is now going into Estonia. Okay? All right, and I need you to read that real quick. This is coming from www.cracked.com. CRACKED. And it's 6 insane Christmas traditions from around the world. All right, and this is one of those traditions. This is coming from Estonia. Go ahead.
One of the most important Estonian peasant traditions involves bringing home of authentic Christmas straw, which is supposed to symbolize the manger.
The manger.
Okay,
so many of you hear about the story of the Nativity, Christ in the manger, Mary, Joseph, so on and so forth. Go ahead.
Whose manger? Estonia. The children are encouraged to frolic around in this filthy horse food and with no other options given to them, most likely just to do that.
Go ahead.
Christmas Eve and night are considered sacred, and Estonians use the 2-day window for the exclusive purpose of fortune telling.
So on this day, they deal with fortune telling. So once again, while you over in America, you got the whole family together, you're drinking eggnog, you're doing all these things. Over here, they're dealing with fortune telling. And believe it or not, because you're celebrating this holiday, you're also partaking in fortune telling. You're part of all the practices that take place throughout the four corners of the earth on Christmas. Go ahead.
Predicting next year's weather and harvest.
Go ahead.
Ancestors' spirits are said to visit families' houses during this time.
So they believe that the ancestor spirits, which are really what the Bible called familiar spirits, visit families' houses during this holiday. And this is similar to what we just read earlier with Saturnalia, in which they get drunk. They deal with all sorts of practices in hopes of coming in contact with a spirit. It's all the same practices repackaged and kept over and over through century, through age, through generation. Go ahead. Salaki.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
How they get along with the strange fortune tellers already mingling about their premises is not elaborated upon, though one suspects is no more awkward than the American Christmas with an ample amount of eggnog and beer available.
Go ahead.
Another of the oldest holiday traditions in Estonia is the Christmas Eve sauna.
So they have a custom called the Christmas Eve sauna. Go ahead.
Which is exactly as appealing as it sounds. After being required to see all of your immediate family sweaty and nude, one might welcome the opportunity of a heart-to-heart with a relative visiting from beyond the grave.
So in other words, the whole family goes to a sauna on this particular day, and they deal with their family members or see their family members sweaty and nude. All right? What is this linked to? This goes back to Saturnalia and Juvenalia, practices in which the adults deal with homosexuality, cross-dressing, orgies, and then the children, through Juvenalia, are also allowed to partake in the feast and the revelry. Okay? So this is still kept to some degree in Estonia. All right, let's move on to the next one. Let's go to the idle Christmas log in Spain. We're just going to jump down and just read a few points from this one before we move on. Okay, go ahead.
The idol log, also known as the Tio de Nadal or Catalan. Where we got here? Yeah, in the English it means Christmas log.
Go ahead.
Also known simply as Tio, trunk or just log or big piece of cut wood, or tronca, is a character of a Catalan mythology relating to a Christmas tradition widespread in Catalonia. A similar tradition exists. How you move that?
Go ahead.
A similar tradition exists in other places such as
Chachafuok.
Tachafuok and Sakdi Nadel in Akatonia.
Now these are in different languages, okay, so it's kind of hard to pronounce these particular terms. Go ahead.
Or the Tizan de Nadal or Tronca de Nabida in Aragon. Regions with a common history.
All right. So now we're gonna jump past this. Now we don't want to read all of this because some of the terminology is a bit vulgar. Okay, so we don't want to go through that. But this is actually what they deal with. This is an actual custom that's kept in Spain. Okay, but we're going to show you the significance and how it links to what the Bible states about idolatry. All right. So let's just jump here. Recently,
the Tio has come to stand up on 2 or 4 little stick legs with a broad smiling face painted on the higher end of the 2.
So keep in mind that they paint the face of this particular idol. Keep that in mind. It's a key point. Go ahead.
Enhanced by a little red sock hat, a miniature of a traditional Catalan barretina.
So they have a little red sock hat similar to your Santa Claus hat. Go ahead.
And often a 3-dimensional nose. Those accessories have been added only in recent times, altering the more traditional and rough natural appearance of the dead piece of wood.
So keep in mind that this is done to alter the more traditional rough natural appearance of a dead piece of wood. We're going to see what the Bible has to say about this. Let's read on. Go ahead.
Beginning with the feast of the Immaculate Conception on December 8th, one gives the Tio a little bite to eat.
So they go on December 8th and they give this log food to eat. In other words, they offer sacrifices to this log. Go ahead.
They usually do this every night, and they'll cover him with a blanket.
They cover it with a blanket. Go ahead.
So it won't be cold.
So it won't be cold. Keep in mind, this is a log. This is an idol. Okay, go ahead.
Story goes that in the days preceding Christmas, children must take good care of the log, keeping it warm and feeding it so that it poops out Christmas trees on Christmas Day.
So in other words, they feed and they take care of this log in hopes that it'll give gifts and presents on Christmas Day. Okay? Or as it says, Christmas trees on Christmas Day. Let's jump down to this, the tradition says.
The tradition says that before beating the Tio, all the kids have to leave the room and go to another place of the house to pray, asking for the Tio to deliver.
So keep in mind that children, before they partake in the custom of beating this log, they must first go into another room and pray and do what?
Asking for the Tio to deliver a lot of presents.
And they ask this idol, this Tio, this piece of wood, this log, to deliver them lots of presents. We're going to see what the Bible has to say about all these particular topics, okay? Let's read that one last one before we go right into the Bible.
This makes the perfect excuse for the relatives to do the trick and put the presents under the blanket while the kids are praying.
So the family members, the parents, instead of telling their children that this is an idol, they add to the superstition by allowing their children to go into another room. And while they're in the other room, they come and they bring presents. And they make it seem as if the log was the one who produced these presents. Now we're going to go into the Bible and see what it has to state about some of these customs, because the Bible does make mention of some of these particular things. Okay? So we're going to start in the book of Isaiah, the 44th chapter, the 19th verse. Go ahead.
Isaiah 44 verse 19. and more considereth in his heart, neither there is knowledge nor understanding to say, I have burnt part of it in the fire.
So this is the concept of someone who, or the mindset of someone who offers wood or makes offerings to wood idols. All right? It says, and none considereth in his heart, neither is there knowledge nor understanding to say, I have burnt part of it in the fire. So he's not considering that he just took part of this wood and offered it in the fire. Okay, go ahead.
Yea, also I have baked bread upon the coals thereof.
So he used it to bake bread. Go ahead.
I have roasted flesh and eaten it. And shall I make the residue thereof an abomination?
So shall I take the residue of this wood and make it an abomination? In other words, turn it into an idol. Go ahead.
Shall I fall down to the stock of a tree?
So the Bible asks an intelligent question. Shall I fall down to the stock of a tree? And of course, we know the answer is no. But this is a custom they perform in Spain as a celebration for Christmas. Go ahead.
Verse 20. He feedeth on ashes, a deceived heart have turned him aside, that he cannot deliver his soul, nor say, is there not a lie in my right hand?
All right. Is it not a lie in your right hand? Is that idol not a lie? Okay. Let's go to the book of Jeremiah chapter 3 verse 9. And after that, we're going to jump to the wisdom of Solomon. All right. Jeremiah 3 and 9. And let's see what that has to say about the stock. Go ahead.
Jeremiah 3 and 9. And it came to pass through the lightness of her whoredom that she defiled the land.
So this is speaking about the children of Judah. Through the likeness of her whoredom, she did what?
That she defiled the land.
She defiled the land. Go ahead.
And committed adultery with stones and with sticks.
So yes, we in the past also dealt with similar customs, giving reverence and worship to stones and stocks. What is a stock? That's a wooden log, similar to the one that they worship in Spain for Christmas. Okay? Let's get Wisdom of Solomon 13. And we're going to start at verse 11.
Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 13, verse 11. Now a carpenter that felleth timber, after his own sawn down a tree, meet for the purpose.
So he takes a tree and saws it down for a purpose. Okay, whether it's to make a table, a chair, whatever the case may be, he saws a tree and uses it for whatever purpose he needs to use it for. Go ahead.
And taken off all the bark skillfully round about, and have wrought it handsomely, and made a vessel thereof fit for the service of a man's life.
And they make a vessel fit for the service of man's life. Go ahead.
After spending the refuse of his work to dress his meat, have filled himself. Verse 13. And taking the very refuse among those which serve to no use, being a crooked piece of wood.
Being what?
A crooked piece of wood.
Being a crooked piece of wood. That's all it is. It's a crooked piece of wood. But remember, we just read earlier that in Spain, in order to decorate and alterate a crooked piece of wood, or this ugly piece of wood, they did what? They painted it. They decorated it. They put blankets on it. They put faces on it. Okay? Go ahead.
And full of knots, have carved it diligently when he had nothing else to do, and formed it by the skill of his understanding, and fashioned it to the imagine of a man.
So he fashioned it to the image of a man. Go ahead. And when you get a chance, look up the Christmas log, and you'll see that they have a face, a painted face on this log, with what they call a 3D nose sticking out of this log. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that the Bible is making reference in particular to this particular idol that they deal with in Spain. But when you read Wisdom of Solomon, it goes into the full spirit and the full mindset of an idolater. So many of the idolatrous customs that you'll come across in the world can go back to the book of Wisdom of Solomon. from the 12th chapter all the way up to about the 15th to 16th chapter. Go ahead.
Verse 14. Or made it like some vile beast, laying it over with vermilion, and with paint colouring it red, and covering every spot therein. Verse 15. And when he made it a convenient room for it, set it on a wall, he made it fast with iron.
Go ahead.
For he provided for it that he might not fall, knowing that it was unable to help itself.
So it states when he had made a convenient room for it and set it in a wall and made it fast with iron, he provided for it that it might not fail or might not fall, knowing that it was unable to help itself. So in other words, this is just a lifeless idol. It has no power. It cannot walk. It cannot speak. It cannot protect itself. Okay, go ahead.
For it is an image and have need of help.
Go ahead.
Verse 17. Then maketh he prayer for his goods.
Then he maketh prayer for his goods. You remember we read earlier that children are sent into another room and they do what? They pray for presents from this log, or they pray to this log for presents, for gifts. Okay, go ahead.
Then he maketh he prayer for his goods.
He prayer for his goods to the same idol that he just carved with his own hands. Go ahead.
For his wife and children, and it not ashamed to speak that which have no life. Verse 18.
So in other words, he's not afraid to pray to that which has no life. Go ahead.
For health he calleth upon that which is weak. For life prayeth to that which is dead. For aid humble beseecheth that which have least means to help. And for good journey he asketh of which cannot set a foot forward. And for gaining and getting, and for good success of his hands, asketh ability to do of him that is most unable to do anything.
So this is the full mindset of an idolater. He goes to something that's weak in order to ask for his health. For his journey, something that can't even move, he asks and prays that it protects him on his journey. Okay? That's the foolish mindset of an idolater. And this is similar, as we just read out of the book of Wisdom of Solomon. We showed you that these customs are similar throughout many people who practice idolatry, even those who deal with the Christmas log. All right? Let's move on to the next one. Let's move on to the next custom. All right? This is coming from Greece. All right? Now, this is a Greek word, so we may have trouble pronouncing this one. It's called Kali Kanzaru. Okay? We're going to leave it there. It's a pretty hard Greek word, but we're going to read, we're more so focused on the custom than the actual pronunciation of the word. All right? And this is coming from 24 or 25 bizarre Christmas traditions from around the world. All right, go ahead.
Kalikanzaro. According to the Greek folklore, these subterranean goblins come up to the surface once every year during the 12 days of Christmas.
So during that 12 days of Christmas, or that 12 days of Saturnalia, subterranean, meaning under the earth, these goblins, they believe, come up into the earth and involve themselves with the working of mankind, or with the works of mankind. Go ahead.
During the rest of the year, they stay underground, sawing away at the world tree, so it will collapse, and the earth along with it. When they are just about to make their final cuts, however, Christmas comes around, and they forget their original mission as they surface to terrorize humanity.
So their whole purpose is to surface to terrorize humanity. Go ahead.
After Christmas, though, they will return to their underground dwellings, only to find that the tree is healed itself, so they must begin their sinister work anew.
All right, so that's what they deal with in Greece, as well as other places like Serbia and other areas of Eastern Europe. Let's move on to the next one. All right, this is the last one before we move on to our next segment. All right, go ahead. This particular custom is called the Yule goat. Y-U-L-E, goat. And this is kept in Scandinavia. All right. Now, this is coming from Wikipedia.com. You can always just go to Wikipedia, type in Yule goat, and go directly to the history, and you'll find what we're about to read. Okay? The Yule goat's origins.
The Yule goat's origins might go as far back as pre-Christian days. A popular theory is that the celebration of the goat is connected to worship of Norse god Thor.
So this is a goat that's connected to the worship of the Norse god Thor. Go ahead.
Who rode the sky in a chariot drawn by two goats.
And he rode the sky, or according to folklore, he rode the sky in a chariot drawn by goats. Sounds similar. Okay, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, drawing Santa Claus or flying Santa Claus over the earth to give out gifts and presents to children and so on and so forth. This is where that practice comes from. Go ahead.
The last sheaf of grain bundled in the harvest was credited with magical properties as the spirit of the harvest, and saved the Yule celebration, called among the other things Julbakken, the Yule goat. A man-sized goat figure is known for the 11th century remembrance of the Childermas, where it was led by a man dressed as Saint Nicholas, symbolizing his control over the devil.
So this is all of the madness that they deal with this particular custom. This goes back to Scandinavia. And part of the custom of this goat is that every Christmas, or every time this particular celebration comes up, they eventually burn this goat, this straw goat. And I'm not sure if many of you seen this movie called The Wicker Man, or The Wicker Man, in which is a town in which basically they deal with pagan customs of sacrifice and human sacrifice. And you have this guy who goes into the city, and he's trying to save this girl who's eventually about to become a sacrifice to the gods of this particular town. And little does he know that he's actually part of the sacrifice. While he's trying to save the girl, he's actually being lured into this straw construct called the Wicker Man. And he eventually, if you watch the movie, I don't want to spoil it, but eventually he's drawn into this idol and then burnt as a sacrifice. Okay? So I wouldn't be surprised if there's some level of child sacrifice or human sacrifice linked to this particular idol. All right? So that's pretty much it as far as the different traditions of Christmas throughout the four corners of the earth. And really, this is mainly, as we just read, these are mainly European customs. All right? And we wanted to focus mainly on Europe. But as we go through some of the traditions or the origin of famous Christmas traditions, we're going to find that some of these practices were also kept in places like ancient Egypt. Okay? And of course, we also went into ancient Babylon. So now the last segment of this lesson is going to be focusing on famous Christmas traditions and their origin. And the first thing we're going to go into is Christmas lights, okay, and Christmas decorations. All right, this is going into the origin of Christmas lights, and we're going to scroll down because we got many quotes that we've researched. But there's one that stands out, and this is coming from mirrorofisisfreeyellow.com. I'm going to paste this into the chat, and hopefully it comes up. All right, and we're going to read this particular custom called, or we're going to read the origin of the custom of Christmas lights. Go ahead.
In ancient Egypt, a great festival was annually celebrated in Sais, the ancient city of Neve, called the Feast of Lamps.
So they had a feast in ancient Egypt called the Feast of Lamps. And this, as they're going to show, gives rise to the origin of Christmas lights and Christmas decorations. Go ahead.
On this night, the veil between the worlds was drawn aside.
So they believed that the veil, the separation between the natural world and the spirit world, was drawn away. Okay, so there was no longer any barrier between the physical and the spiritual. Go ahead.
The Greek historian Herodotus wrote the following passage concerning this celebration. When they assemble at Sais on the night of the sacrifice, they will all keep lamps burning in the open air round about their houses. These lamps are saucers full of salt and oil, the wick floating thereon, and burning all night. This is called the Feast of Lamps. Egyptians who did not come to this assemblage are carefully on that night sacrificed to keep their own lamps burning. So they are a light, and not only at Sais but throughout all Egypt. A sacred tale is told showing why this night is thus lit up and honored.
Okay, so that's Herodotus, an ancient Greek historian, or they consider him an historian, which goes into the custom of ancient Egyptian Feast of Lamps and how they lit up the city during around the same time of year, which we call Christmas. Okay, let's scroll up. There's another one which goes into this custom. This is coming from www.soulscold.com. Is your Christmas holiday more pagan than Christian? Go ahead.
The lights represented the birth of the new God and the return of the light on the shortest day of the year. The lights on the Christmas tree is to carry over the candles and the fire lit by pagans in the symbolic ritual to lure back the warning sun. Witches' balls are hollow glass ornaments popular in parts of Europe in the 18th century, but their origin is much older. They were designed to ward off evil spirits and ill wishes that were directed at your family. Hanging these balls in windows was thought to tantalize spirits because of their colors and trap them inside of the bulb when they touched it, forever holding the Mirandan spirit hostage.
So this is the origin of your Christmas lights, both on the tree as well as in your window. They believe that if you put these things in your window, you'll protect your house from demons. And if demons approach your house, they'll get trapped in the lights. Okay? Let's move on to the next one. The Christmas tree. Okay, the origin of the Christmas tree. Let's start here. And this is coming from www.religionstolerance.org. Christmas tree. Go ahead.
Not having evergreen trees, the ancient Egyptians considered the palm tree to symbolize resurrection. They decorated their homes with branches during the winter solstice.
So they have history which shows that this custom goes back to ancient Egypt. Okay, go ahead.
The first decorating of an evergreen tree began with the heathen Greeks and the worship of their god Adonia, who allegedly brought back to life by the serpent Asclepius after having been slain. The ancient pagan Romans decorated their trees with bits of metal and replicas of their god.
Now we know we have history according to the Bible which predates the origin of the Greeks and Adonis and the decorating of the tree. Okay? But nonetheless, it still proves that this goes back to ancient pagan origin. Okay, speaking about the Christmas tree. Go ahead.
Bacchus, a fertility god, they also placed 12 candles on the tree in honor of their sun god.
Once again, going back to the 12 days of Christmas and the 12 days of Saturnalia. Go ahead.
Their midwinter festival of Saturnalia started on December 17th and often lasted until a few days after the solstice.
All right. Let's jump down. Let's get this quote here, Nimrod. This is coming from www.sabbathcovenant.com. Book 2, Mystery Religion of Babylon, Chapter 5. Go ahead.
Nimrod started the great organized worldly apostasy from God that had dominated the world until now. Nimrod married his own mother, who was Semiramis. After Nimrod's death, his so-called mother wife, Semiramis, propagated the evil doctrine of the survival of Nimrod as a spirit being. She claimed a full-grown evergreen tree sprang overnight from a dead tree stump, which symbolized the springing forth unto the new life of the dead Nimrod.
So in other words, it sprang over his grave as a sign of Nimrod's spiritual resurrection. Go ahead.
On each anniversary of his birth, she claimed Nimrod would visit the evergreen tree and leave gifts upon it. 25th of December was the birthday of Nimrod, and this is the real origin of the Christmas tree.
All right, so that's their take on the origin of the Christmas tree. All right, and there's more history on this custom, but you can always go back and look these things up. What we're doing is we're just giving you a window into some of these customs, and to give you a basis and foundations from where you can actually start to do your research and actually show your family members where these things come from. All right, let's move on to the next one, the mistletoe. Okay, this is coming from www.thewhitegoddess.co.uk, dealing with mythology and folklore, mistletoe. Okay, mistletoe and the Druids.
The ancient Druids believed mistletoe to bring an indicator of great sacredness. The winter solstice, called Arthan by the Druids, was, according to the bardic tradition, the time when the chief Druid would cut the sacred mistletoe from the oak. The mistletoe is a cut using a golden sickle on the sixth night of the new moon after the winter solstice. A cloth held below the tree by other members of the order would catch the spigs of the mistletoe as they fell. As it was believed that it would have profaned the mistletoe to fall upon the ground, it would then divide the branches into many sprigs and distributed them to the people, who hung them over the doorways as protection against thunder, lightning, and other evils. The Druids are thought to have believed that the berries of the mistletoe represented the sperm of the gods.
Now, once again, we don't mean to be vulgar, but this is what the pagans believe concerning these particular customs. Okay, go ahead.
When pressed, a semen-like substance issues from the white berries. Mistletoe was considered a magical
aphrodisiac.
All
right, now that's why they carry on till this day the custom of kissing under the mistletoe. All right, that was another custom that was kept during Saturnalia. All right. So this particular article, which you can go back and read, goes into the ancient pagans and how they dealt with the plant called the mistletoe. All right, so this is coming from pagans themselves. Let's get the last one, the reindeer and sleigh. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Okay, let's see where that comes from. www.purespirit.com, more animal symbolism. Go ahead.
The reindeer's association with Santa's sleigh began with a poem by Clement C. Moore. 'Twas the night before Christmas, written in the late 1824. Various versions, including the 1912 copyright version published by Houghton Mifflin Company, Boston, have all 80 tiny reindeer.
Have all 8 tiny reindeer. Go ahead.
Pulling Santa's sleigh.
Go ahead.
In early Norse myths, Thor's chariot was pulled by goats, who later transformed into reindeer.
So this all goes back to Norse mythology and Thor, who had goats transferring or pulling his his sleigh, his chariot. All right, go ahead.
Some believe this was the inspiration for Moore's poem.
All right, so that's an example of how they repackaged that particular story, that particular myth, and gave it a cute and cuddly representation. And we're going to touch on that more so tomorrow. All right, go ahead.
Ancient nomadic pagan Eurasian tribes featured reindeer in a sacrificial religion rituals. Prior to hunting season, reindeer were either killed or consecrated and placed with a slaughtered wolf on the high platform to symbolize the gods were pleased and would not allow wolves to attack reindeer. Annual ceremonies in the spring were led by a shaman to change the location where images of their gods were kept.
Exactly. So this was a shamanistic practice. In other words, a sorcerer. That's what a shaman is, a witch doctor. Okay? And there's more information on the reindeers and that custom. But once again, you can always go back and look this information up. It's widely available on the internet. All right. How about the wreath? A lot of people hang wreaths on their doors and make it a part of their decoration. Let's see if this has any link to paganism. Let's jump to this one. www.blackhillscelticevents.org. All right, go ahead.
In addition to being associated with the sun god Saturn in ancient Rome, holly was important in pagan and Druid religion and customs.
So this goes back to ancient pagan and Druidic traditions and customs. Go ahead.
Under many pagan religions, it was customary to place holly leaves and branches around their dwellings during winter. This was intended as a kindly and hospitable gesture. They believed that the tiny fairies which inhabited the forest could come into their homes and use the holly as shelter against the cold.
So in other words, they thought the holly was a habitation for demons. That's what fairies are. All right, little demonic spirits. Go ahead.
This may actually have some basis in fact, as holly growing in the wild is often used as a shelter by small animals, primarily insects. To the Druids, it was holly's evergreen nature that made it special. They believed that it remained green to help keep the earth beautiful. When the deciduous trees, such as the oak, which they also held sacred, shed their leaves, it was also their custom to wear it in their hair when they ventured into the forest to watch the priests collecting mistletoe. The holly berries were thought to represent the sacred menstrual blood of their goddess. And
once again, more vulgarity, which we don't mean to bring out, but this is what they believe concerning this particular idol called the wreath. All right, go ahead.
In addition to these uses, some ancient religions used holly for protection. They would decorate doors and windows with it in the hopes that it would capture or at least dissuade any evil spirits.
So it was thought to capture or dissuade evil spirits. So all of these holiday decorations, customs, we think these things just dropped out of the sky into our lap and just became traditions overnight. But these things go back to ancient pagan customs and traditions. Okay? Sorcery, witchcraft, spiritualism, okay, demonology, you name it, it's involved with these practices surrounding Christmas. Okay? Go ahead.
And any evil spirits before they could enter the house. In effect, it was used as a fly paper for demons.
So it was considered a fly paper for demons. All right. Now let's go into the Bible. And we're going to get a few various facts on some of the well-known, well-kept traditions of Christmas. Okay? Many of us already know that Christ, of course, was not born on December 25th. But just to solidify these facts, we're going to go to the book of Luke, the 2nd chapter. And we're going to actually prove. And this will help you prove to those who are in your family or those of your friends and close relatives who still keep this tradition. And they may ask you, why you don't keep this tradition, even though you believe in Christ, you believe in the Bible. And this is a way you can bring forth the information. All right. Number one, you don't have to slap them over the head with the Bible. You don't have to be argumentative and go into a spirit of debate with your family members. There's a way you can teach your family members about this information without going into the spirit of a lion in your household. Okay? So let's go to the Bible and let's get the book of, as a matter of fact, let's get Matthew, the first chapter. All right, Matthew, let's start at verse 18.
Now the birth of Yeshua Christ was on this wise.
So this is the wisdom of how Christ was born. We're going to see if this mentions Christ's birthday and when he was born. Go ahead.
When as his mother Mary was espoused to Joseph, before they came together, she was found with child of the Holy Spirit.
Go ahead.
Then Joseph, her husband, being just a man and not willing to make her a public example.
So Joseph was a just man. He didn't want Mary to be a public example, meaning he didn't want her to receive the judgment written of in Deuteronomy, the 22nd chapter, being stoned to death. All right, go ahead.
Not willing to make her a public example, was minded to put her away privately.
Go ahead.
But while he thought on these things, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a dream, saying, Joseph, thou son of David, fear not to take unto thee Mary thy wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit.
Go ahead.
Verse 21. And she brought forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Yeshua, for
meaning my Savior. Go ahead.
For he shall save his people from their sins.
Go ahead.
Verse 22. For now all this was done, that might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Behold, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us.
And we know that's a prophecy by the prophet Isaiah. It is also important to mention that Isaiah, or none of the prophets, mentioned exactly when Christ would be born or his birthday. Okay, that was never a point of doctrine. The whole point is that he would come into the earth and be a sacrifice for his people, the nation of Israel. Okay, Luke the 2nd chapter. In fact, let's start at Luke 1 and 60. Let's see. Let's start at the book of St. Luke, chapter 1. We're going to jump down at verse 40. Let's see what Christ's mother had to say about Christ and his birth.
Luke 1 and 40.
In fact, let's jump down to 46. Luke 1 and 46.
Verse 46. And Mary said, My soul doeth magnify the Lord.
My soul doeth magnify the Lord. Go ahead.
And my spirit have rejoiced in God my Saviour.
Go ahead.
For he hath regarded the low estate of his handmaiden. For, behold, for the henceforth all generations shall call me blessed.
So all generations would call Mary blessed, but based on the fact that she brought forth Christ. Not based on the fact that she was part of some immaculate conception, or Christ was born on December 25th and the nativity and all those different things. It was based on the fact that she was bringing forth the Savior of the nation of Israel. Go ahead.
Verse 49. For he that is mighty have done to me great things, and holy is his name.
Go ahead.
Verse 50. And his mercy is on them that fear him from generation to generation. He hath showed strength with his arm, and he hath scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. He hath put down the mighty of their seats, and exalted them of low degree. He hath filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he hath sent empty away. He hath opened his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, and he spake to our fathers, to Abraham, and to his seed forever. And Mary abode with her about 3 months, and returned to her own house.
So this is Christ's mother Mary, and as we can see, there's absolutely no mention of Christ's birth, okay, and when he would be born. It was all based on his mission when he came into the earth. What was his mission? The Savior of the nation of Israel. All right, let's jump over to verse 70. Okay, let's see if anyone else was rejoicing on December 25th or rejoicing over the idea that Christ would be born on December 25th. Go ahead.
Verse 70. And has he spake by the mouth of his holy prophets, which have been since the world began.
So all the prophets spake of Christ's coming since the world began. Go ahead.
That we would be saved from our enemies.
That we would be saved from our enemies. Go ahead.
And from the hand of all that hate us.
Go ahead.
To perform the mercy promised to our fathers, and to remember his holy covenant.
So that's why Christ came into the earth, to solidify the promises that were made to our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Go ahead.
The oath which he swore to our father Abraham.
Go ahead.
That he would grant unto us that we, being delivered out of the hand of our enemies, might serve him without fear.
Go ahead. So that was the whole point of Christ's coming. Go ahead. To deliver us out of the hand of our enemies. Go ahead.
Verse 75. In holiness and in righteousness before him all the days of our life. And thou children shalt be called the prophet of highness.
And this child will be called the prophet of the highest. Okay? So this is what those of during the time of Christ, the contemporaries of Christ, who were there during the time of his birth, this is what they were praying for. Okay? This is what they were celebrating, the fact that he would come into the earth and deliver the nation of Israel, to perform the mercies that were promised by the Most High and spoken through the prophet David, to perform the oaths that were promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay? That was the importance of Christ's coming, not the day that he was born. Nowhere in the Bible do you see anyone celebrating Christ's birth. And I know they got the story of the wise men, or what they call the 3 wise men. But we're going to get the scriptures on that also. Go on to the book of St. Matthew, because there's misconceptions about that story also. You're going to find out in the Bible, nowhere does it make mention of 3 wise men. Okay? Go on to the book of St. Matthew, the 2nd chapter. All right, you can start at verse 1. All right, we're going to the book of St. Matthew, chapter 2, verse 1.
Now when Yeshua was born in the days of Bethlehem, Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east of Jerusalem.
So the Bible states that wise men came from the east to Jerusalem. So yes, the Bible does make mention of wise men. But it in no way, shape, or form makes mention of how many wise men. Okay, there could have been 2 wise men. There could have been 20 wise men. There could have been 30, 40. Okay, the Bible does not make mention. Okay, go ahead.
Behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews.
So they ask, where is he that is born King of the Jews? Go ahead.
For we have seen his star in the east.
Go ahead.
And are come to worship him.
And are come to worship him. Because usually when a king came into the earth, people came to give reverence to that king. They came to give gifts to that king. Okay, go ahead.
When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Verse 4, and when he gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born.
So now this is going into where Christ should be born. Now, if there's any chapter in the Bible that should have made mention of the date of Christ's birth, it should have been Matthew, the 2nd chapter. Because this is now going into the events surrounding his birth. Okay, the wise men coming to visit him. Herod putting a hit out on Christ and asking for Christ to be killed before he was born. Okay, or seeking to kill Christ before he was born. Okay, go ahead.
Verse 5, and they said unto him in Bethlehem of Judea, for this is written by the prophet, and thou Bethlehem in the land of Judea art not the least among the princes of Judah.
So this is going back to the prophet Micah. And once again, Micah did not make any mention or reference to the date of Christ's birth. He only made mention to where he would be born and the tribe he would come from. Where was he born? Bethlehem. What tribe did he come from? Judah. Go ahead.
For out of thee shall come a governor, and there shall rule my people Israel.
Go ahead.
Then Herod, when he had privately called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared.
Okay, so that's it on that. So we're just giving you examples to show you that in the Bible, the key points of doctrine that they bring forth in the Christian or the Christianized celebration of Christmas don't even come from the Bible. The three wise men, not in the Bible. Christ being born December 25th, not in the Bible. Okay? In fact, we have history, which is going to be our very last point before we close out, to show you that it would have been impossible for Christ to be born in the harsh environment and conditions of December 25th in a manger. Okay? And it's going to be our last quote before we close out. And let me get the source of this quote, so you all can go back and research this. Okay. This first quote is coming from Sarah Rubin. This is a so-called Jew woman, I assume, based on her name. The chief of the Israeli Weather Service, a 1990 press release. So this is actually a chief of the Israeli Weather Service giving an account of the harshness of weather on December 25th. Okay? Go ahead.
The temperature in the area of Bethlehem in December averages around 44 degrees Fahrenheit, but can drop well below freezing, especially at night.
So she states that the temperature in the area of Bethlehem in December averages about 44 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I know other parts of the world deal with Celsius, but for those who are familiar with Fahrenheit, we know that 44 degrees Fahrenheit is very cold. Okay, it's almost near freezing, which is about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, go ahead.
But can drop to well below freezing.
But it can drop well below freezing. Go ahead.
Especially at night.
Especially at night. Why is that significant? Because Christ was born in a manger at night. Where? In Israel. Go ahead.
That area has 3 months of frost in December with 29 degrees Fahrenheit.
And it has 3 months of frost and December with 29 degrees Fahrenheit. That's below freezing. Okay, so it would have been impossible for Christ to have been born in those conditions. All right, let's move on to your next quote. This is coming from Tertullian, which was one of the early church fathers, AD 155 to 220, 2001. All right, and this is quoted by David Burkhardt. Okay, let's read this quote.
On your day of pagan gladness, we Christians neither cover our doorposts with wreaths. You consider it a proper thing to decorate your house like some new brothel, but we do not celebrate along with you the holidays.
All right, now this is going into something different. This is now showing you that back during that time, those who were following and worshiping Christ and dealing with the true concept of Christianity understood that the customs and practices that we know today as Christmas were pagan. And the decorating of your house with wreaths back then, that was similar to decorating your house like a brothel. Okay? Those who follow Christ didn't deal with those particular practices. All right? So it says, but we do not celebrate along with you the holidays. So they didn't deal with those holidays that you see being followed in the modern day Christian church. Okay? So that's pretty much it for today's segment of going into some history on Christmas. Tomorrow we're going to pick up showing you how Christmas was repackaged and rebranded as a Christianized, commercialized holiday. Okay? So that'll be the focus in tomorrow's lesson. And once again, this is simply lessons for those who are out there by themselves, who don't have anyone to link in with, who may be feeling the ups and downs and the depression that's coming with the Christmas spirit. So hopefully this lesson brought forth much edification and research that you can go back and build upon and share with your family members in the spirit of love and truth. With that, we want to say bless you all and shalom. If you would like, we can answer a few questions before we close out. Otherwise, we'll just close out and leave things until tomorrow.